Hey, yo, we'll be live shortly. Just bear with me. I'm working on some stuff here. Sorry. Who remembers this? I'm digging into the well. I'm digging into the box that you have locked up in your basement, in your garage, in your attic. Maybe you rent the storage space, but if you were a gamer back in the 90s, the period of the Super Nintendo, Super Famicom, depending on what system you played, and you were a big Dragon Ball fan, Dragon Ball Z fan, you should know this theme song. Classic, going way back. I forget how awesome this soundtrack is actually for this game, but this is the opening theme song to Dragon Ball Z Super Butōden number 2. Come on now. Let's go.
Yeah! Wow.
This was around the time where Dragon Ball Z games were very scarce, limited. Maybe some of you didn't even know what Dragon Ball Z was, but you saw this game somehow. Maybe at a local game shop, your friend's house, at a comic book convention, video game convention. And you saw these interesting characters on this Super Nintendo fighting against each other. Maybe for some of you, this was your introduction to Dragon Ball Z. So much to talk about this morning, y'all. God, it brings back so much memories. I'm thinking about it all right now. It's amazing. Like I said, a lot to talk about this morning. Oh, I had no fade out on that one because I was playing directly off of YouTube. But whatever. Hey, good morning, good afternoon. Let's get things started, shall we? 28 minutes past the hour, 52 degrees here in New York City. It's morning for some, afternoon for others, but good morning. Whoa. Good morning, y'all. Apologies for sounding very raspy this morning. This has been a week for me. Haven't had the greatest of sleeps this whole week, mixed in with some weird seasonal allergies going on in the mornings. Hanging out with friends, getting slightly drunk one night, and just sleeping very late. Poor sleep schedule. Haven't been happy about it. But I'm here now. Yes, it's not my usual 10 a.m., but I'm here because I promised to go live, and I want to go live. And I feel like today is a very important day to go live and just have a chance to talk about the creations of the legendary, the great Akira Toriyama. And, it affected my life a lot growing up. Introduced me to really a whole new world of animation, manga, character creation, storylines, and just really brilliance in art from this really prestigious manga creator. And it was such a weird thing. I was last night online with some friends playing Helldivers 2, as I've been doing quite often these last couple of weeks. And, just we were kind of in a break or loading pattern, waiting for the next mission to start or solidify. And I just happened to look at my phone and boom, got a Twix notification, that Akira Toriyama has passed away. And apparently he passed away on March 1st. So the family made the announcement last night or today, Japan time. And it's such a young age too, 68. That's considered very young today. So definitely had so much more to give, I'm sure, in his creative life. I was just talking to a friend of mine about one of the games coming out this year, Sandland, based off of his more recent manga creation. And I was like kind of looking forward to it because I saw like the trailer, the reveal recently online, and they're doing like a deep dive as to the mechanics of the game. You know, they were talking about how Akira, not only is he very unique when it comes to his character creation, but he loves creating vehicles, machinery. That's one of the things why you notice, especially in Dragon Ball Z, or even in early Dragon Ball, how there's a lot of focus on Capsule Corporation, because Capsule Corporation was the corporation Bulma was a part of, where it was all mechanics and robotics. You needed a motorcycle, boom, here's a capsule, da-dum, and you get instant motorcycle. You need a car, same thing. A hover car, a hover bike, a spaceship, all of that was basically run by Capsule Corp, right? But if you notice and you pay attention, there was such amount of detail going into his machinery, into his mechanics, into his vehicles. And Sandland is the type of game that's going to focus a lot on that, because I believe, based on the trailers that I saw, a portion of the game is you know, creating your own customizable tanks, cars, motorcycles, um, just vehicles in general, and mechanics and robotics, which I found fascinating. I'm like, that's awesome. And everything looks like it was taken directly out of one of his mangas. And it's nice that we're going to be getting that this year. And who knew that that was going to be like one of the last, I guess, things that we're going to get fresh and new from Akira Toriyama, because, you know, he worked very closely with developers on that game, because it's basically, you know, taken from his manga. And I believe there was an anime that came out recently about from that same property too. So I haven't had a chance to check it out yet, but I'm of course I'm interested, and especially now I want to see what was the last bits of things that we got from Toriyama. And then we of course, there's that announcement a while ago that we're getting a new Dragon Ball series, Guy, I think it's called, or something like that. I'm not too sure how I feel about it, because it kind of looks like we're going back into the GT realm. I don't know how they're going to explore that, but you know, still, regardless, I always check it out, because it is usually a talking point with me and the majority of my friends. So yeah, very sad news dropping last night, and yeah, he had some sort of blood clot in his brain, and I guess that's what affected things. I'm gonna head on over to the Hollywood Reporter, which was the outlet that I got the notification on from last night. So Akira Toriyama, manga artist and creator of Dragon Ball series, dies at 68. Uh, Equally popular Doctor Slump manga series. That was the first manga that he wrote that kind of put him on the map. And he helped create a lot of the character designs in Dragon Quest, the video game series in Japan, initially known as Dragon Warrior here in the United States. But Toriyama died March 1st from an acute subdural hematoma, the official Dragon Ball website revealed on Friday, and that his funeral was already held by close relatives. He has left many manga titles and works of art to this world thanks to the support of so many people around the world. He has been able to continue his creative activities for over 45 years, a statement on the website said. The statement continued, "We hope that the world of Akira Toriyama's unique work will continue to be loved by everyone for a long time to come." And the article continues on about the history of Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z. He was born in Nagoya, in Japan. Uh, Toriyama's career as a mangaka began in his early 20s when he submitted work to the weekly Shonen Jump magazine. First published work was Wonder Island in 78. Former World War II kamikaze pilot struck on Wonder Island. The follow-up, Wonder Island 2, was published in 1979. Toriyama made his name with the manga Dr. Slump, which was serialized by Weekly Shonen Jump from 1980 to 84. I know this spawned into an anime, and then this led into him creating Dragon Boy, which tells the story of Tang Tong, a young boy with martial arts skill who is tasked with escorting a princess back to her home country. This is what evolved into Dragon Ball, and then later on, pretty much history was set in stone, and the legacy just went on from there when it went to Dragon Ball Z, and so on and so forth. So yeah, very, very sad news. Because of the respect from the family, they waited a good 7 days until the announcement was made so that they could have their funerals private. There was a nice quote from Masako Nozawa-san. She is the long-running OG voice of Goku in the original anime. And she had something to say about the passing. Quote, "I don't want to believe it. My head is empty because I don't want to think about it. Even so, every time I see Goku, I remember what Toriyama sensei said to me. You will take care of Goku, won't you? I cherish that moment. It makes me think I will stay by Goku's side until my strength runs out completely. Sensei, please watch over us from the heavens. We hope you depart in peace." So that was a nice little quote I saw this morning from, again, the voice actress of Goku, OG Goku. Not a lot of people know that Goku is voiced by a female and has been ever since for the longest time. And I love that they kept her on as the voice of Goku every time they did some sort of reiteration of Dragon Ball, Dragon Ball Z, and the like, and all that. So, yeah, RIP to a legend in anime and manga. And of course, there's so many stories to tell about my introduction to his world, his universe. And of course, it goes back way back to like the 80s. And it really started with video games for me personally. And I remember the first time I came across the video game Dragon Warrior. And like I said, here in the States, Dragon Quest was called Dragon Warrior, at least for, I believe, the first 3 iterations of the game, of the franchise, on the regular OG Nintendo. And it was actually, to be honest, the first full RPG I've ever played. Ever. And I remember really digging the characters. I love the little slime guys that you would fight. I love the portrayals of your main character, the armor, and all of the design. The character designs were fantastic. Then I saw, I believe it was probably in a magazine, maybe like an Electronics Gaming Monthly or something, where I saw the original character drawings in Japan of the video game and how it was called Dragon Quest over there. And then I remember hearing that there was a cartoon series. I was like, really? There's a cartoon series based off of this video game? I need to check it out. And they tried to bring it over to the States. I believe the only way you were able to watch it was if you were up at like 5:30, 6 a.m. in the morning. And they had a small time slot on the ABC network here in the United States, or I'm speaking my experience in New York. And if you're up that early and you're able to catch it, awesome. If not, I believe when I found out about it, because I looked at the good old TV guide and I saw there, I was like, I looked at the TV guide and I kept seeing this name, Dragon Warrior, Dragon Warrior. And I'm thinking, is this the same Dragon Warrior like the video game? So I set my VHS to record that time, that showing. And then I remember finally waking up, probably like around noonish or whatever the case, because this was Saturday, right? I popped the tape in and I was like, oh, wow, this looks awesome. I'm like, I really dig the animation style, and around that time, I believe Japanese animation, the only thing I knew of Japanese animation was Voltron, Robotech, you know, understanding briefly that the opening credits of Transformers and G.I. Joe were animated by Japanese artists, but I didn't know the full details behind it all. But I believe, and this was slowly around the time where I was getting more and more exposed to this other world outside of US animation, in the world of Japanese animation, or like the US like to pen it back then. I don't know who. There was definitely a company or a group of people that penned the term Japanimation, and that became more and more clear when I started seeing sections in my local video rental store of Japanese animation. And they used to always have the marquee or the little banner that said Japanimation. And I remember there were magazines and certain outlets that would refer to it as that too. That would be an interesting thing to like kind of look backwards on and to see where that term came from, and how it all started. But yeah, so in the Dragon Warrior cartoon, they've only aired like maybe, I want to say 8 episodes, if that many, and then it just disappeared, and then they kind of just like got rid of it, and we never got to see more of it. I was like, oh, that's unfortunate. That's a bummer. And for the longest time, me and my friends were always looking for a way to find those episodes, and now, if you go in the Internet Archive, there's like a good collection of them, but it's hard to find a complete set of that season and that series. But it's out there, and I watch it, and it's still awesome, in my opinion. But I didn't know who was responsible for the art behind it all. I just knew that I liked it. I thought it was very cool and very different and unique, based off of what I was exposed to here in the States, because if you look at the 80s animation here on TV, it does kind of follow a certain formula at times, and each episode was just its own episode. We never had anything that was like a throughout storyline. It was never serialized. It was always one-shot episodes. So it was just like adventure of the week or adventure of the morning or of the day, and that's it. Nothing was ever long lasting, followed through, unless it was like a major event. I think the first time we experienced that type of storytelling in animation form was Transformers the movie, when in 86, when Transformers the movie came out, there were a lot of things that happened in the movie that transpired and carried on to the TV series. And that was like the first time we were exposed to that type of storytelling. The death of Optimus Prime, the death of other Autobots and Decepticons, the change in leaderships, the introduction of all these new characters. And then before we knew it, they all carried over into the TV series too. Shortly after that, we got G.I. Joe the movie that did the same thing. Oh my God, Cobra Commander is dead. Oh my God, Duke died, right? Something like that. And it was just so weird to see those type of serious storytelling, that serious type of storytelling told in animation form. And then again, like I said, I started to get more exposed to Japanese animation, thanks to companies like Central Park Media, I believe Streamline Pictures or Steam something's. I always forget the name of this company, but I believe they had like a train, like a locomotive as their logo. But these were some of the early companies that started bringing over Japanese anime to the States and kind of exposed us to this world of Japanese animation. And if you look back then, everything was very rudimentary, meaning you will find the same things over and over again. So it's always going to be Fist of the North Star, Akira, um, of course, Robotech, Voltron, Gundam, right? And then some of the other ones that are like offshoots, like Cutie Honey, uh, and Project AKO or AKO, depending on how you want to say it. Patlabor, right? Those are some of the things that you would see on the shelves at your local video rental store. And it provided so many hours of entertainment and just exposure to this world of anime. I never really read the mangas. It was kind of hard to find them at that time here, unless you happen to find yourselves like in Chinatown and passing by a bookstore where they may have happened to have it. But of course, it was translated into Chinese at the time. But I was never really exposed to that stuff. And then I'll remember I was probably around the age of 8 or 9, maybe even 10. And I started going to comic book conventions because I was a big comic book fan. And, my mom would drop me off and then pick me up later on. And these conventions, unlike today, were held in ballrooms and lobbies of hotels. Some of the famous hotels here in New York where those conventions were held were like the Sheraton in Midtown, New York. Hotel Pennsylvania, also Midtown, close, like right across the street from like Madison Square Garden. And I would go there, and peruse, like most of the time it was just me perusing the vendors, checking out what people are selling, seeing if I could pick up some cheap comic books. But you had people who also sold bootleg VHSs. And I would always walk by because they always had their like little TV set up next to them. And they always had something playing on the TV that caught your eye or caught your attention. And it was everything from like the heavy metal cartoon animated movie, because that was kind of hard to get at the time. So people bootlegged it and you would buy it there like that. And each tape cost like $20, I remember. It was like $20. So not cheap, especially for someone my age, right? Who saved up his allowance to go to these conventions to buy dollar comic books, right? So that was going to be a major purchase if I was going to commit to buying a VHS tape. But I saw like, VHS tapes of the Star Wars Holiday Special. Again, that was one of the things that I was exposed to at these conventions, because you can't find these anywhere else. And one day I saw this crazy anime of these people fighting, right? Guy with big, long blonde hair, and a guy that looked like a deranged ladybug, but happened to be green. And I remember there was a group of guys at the vendor watching this, and they're talking about it. And they were much older than I was. And they were just fawning over it. The battle scenes, how everything was so fast paced. And it reminded me of, like, in a way, Fist of the North Star, because I thought like those fight scenes depicted in that animation style looked fantastic. And then this one was kind of similar, but very different. And they were using like these special powers and, doing these crazy screams as they were about to do their powers. And I was just like, what is this? And then one of the guys said, "Oh, this is Dragon Ball Z. Have you not seen it before?" I was like, "No." And it was the Cell Saga that they were showing on the TV, and it was Goku and Cell fighting each other, and Cell was already in his final form. And I'm just like, this looks so much fun. This looks really fascinating. And then I said, I have to watch this. So without thought or without any hesitation, I decided to buy that tape that was playing. Not also realizing that this was part of a storyline in a series. And I bought a tape that was already well past and into a lot of things I've missed prior to it. But I just love the fights. I loved how the fights were all depicted. So I had this tape and I was watching it over and over again at home. And I started to do more research about the characters and the drawings and the artist involved in it. And that's when I first found out that it was all done by Akira Toriyama. And that kind of blew up and kind of gave me that passion and love for this type of art and this artist and his creation of Dragon Ball. And that kind of led me down this rabbit hole of, I need to see more of this stuff. And I had to find out how to see this stuff. So I forgot how it all started. But I remember going to, there was this local video game shop, kind of like a mom and pop shop. I forget the name of it, and I wish I could remember the name of it right now, but it was one of those rare video game shops that allowed you to rent time to sit down and play games at the store. So you would sign up for like a membership, and it gave you an allotted amount of time every month to sit down and just play games on any game console that they had in the store. So they had Nintendo, Super Nintendo, Neo Geo, Genesis, Sega CD. I was first exposed to the Sega CD there in that shop. So they had everything into the 16-bit era. So this is like in the 90s now. We're talking about early 90s, early to mid 90s. And again, I was at this shop and I saw these guys hovering around one of the booths, and they started playing this. They were playing this fighting game. And it was weird because it was, typical Super Nintendo type graphics, pixelated guys fighting each other. But then when they were far apart, it went into the split screen mode where you had the one guy on top, the other guy on the bottom. And I see them feverishly putting in these input codes, unlike Street Fighter. I was very much used to Street Fighter that way. And then it would be like this big animation of like this big beam coming out of their hands. I'm like, wait a minute, is this Dragon Ball Z? And then one of the guys said, yeah, this is Dragon Ball Z. What is it called? Dragon Ball Z Super Butōden. I was like, what? They made a video game off of this thing that I saw, that I have a VHS tape on? I have to try it. And I did. And it's so funny how I was still not 100% familiar with the series at all. But yet, every time I see anything related to it, I'm drawn to it and I have to participate. So I started playing this game and I fell in love with it. So much so that I saved money for like 2 months, 3 months, and I bought it for myself. And I was like, can I actually play this at home? And they're like, yeah, you just need this little adapter. We'll throw that in for you for free. Because I was such a regular at this shop that I became friends with those guys. So I said, awesome. So I bought the first one, and I bought the second one. And I cherished these games for the longest time. I kept the original box to the point where the flap on the box was already hanging on like a hinge. It was like so much wear and tear to this thing. But I would play this game religiously. Both games. I would say I played the second one more than anything. And then every time I would visit the shop, I would talk about it. I was like, tell me more about this Dragon Ball Z. And I said, well, why don't you watch it? And I said, how? There's not a comic book convention that happens every month. I can't keep on going there and buying bootlegs, right? So then he said, well, we started this video rental service here. And there's a wall over there. Check it out. And it's basically a wall of bootleg VHS tapes, all in their clamshells. And just like what they did with renting time to play games, they were starting to slowly introduce the rental of games and these bootleg VHS tapes. So I said, all right, I'll check it out. So I looked at it and I asked them, where should I start? And they had me start on watching the Dragon Ball Z movies. Because if you remember, the Dragon Ball Z movies were kind of like recaps of the seasons in a way, but not quite, right? They were still considered one-offs and one-shoots, but it kind of involved a lot of things and storylines that happened in that season or past season that happened around that time. So they started me off there. And I'd rented the first Dragon Ball Z movie, the second Dragon Ball Z movie, and I was just like, I'm in love with this world. I am just so enthralled and in love with this world. And I just wanted to see more. And then the next convention I went to, there was a vendor selling the bootleg VHS tapes. And this was the first time I actually had a chance to pay attention to what they were having there. And even though these are VHS tapes, these are VHSs that come in with a sleeve like you would buy at the store. But they had their own kind of blank sleeve with no trademarks or markings on them. And they even did their own spine labels. And that's where I was able to see the sagas of the Dragon Ball Z series. And they had it separated by saga. So you had your kind of Vegeta saga, right? You had your original kind of Raditz saga, Vegeta saga, Frieza saga, Cell saga, all the way until the Majin Buu saga, or as the Majin Buu saga was coming out. Again, this was like mid-90s at this point. I was already, I would say this is like around probably like 92, 93. I was still early in high school. And I'm getting more and more exposed to this stuff. Right? So, and they were selling their tapes, I believe it was $15. So it was cheaper than the clamshell stuff I used to buy. And I said, oh, I want to go from the beginning. So I got the one VHS tape and they said, hey, if you buy two, we'll throw in a third for free. I was like, awesome. So I bought the first two VHS tapes of the original beginning of Dragon Ball Z. Is that the Raditz saga? I believe it is. I forget. That's when Goku's brother comes onto Earth, right? And again, I didn't realize that Dragon Ball Z was a sequel series to an original Dragon Ball series that I didn't even know about. So when Goku showed up with his son, and how everyone was like, Goku, we haven't seen you in a while. Oh my God, you have a son. I'm wondering, how did they all know each other? So I was so confused at the time. And also keep in mind, too, that the internet was barely existent at that time. It was still early days of the internet. I believe at that time, Prodigy was still a thing. AOL was slowly becoming a thing. So the utilization of the internet to look for information was just not in my head at that time yet. So after I bought these VHS tapes, the guy told me, hey, if you ever want to buy more and you want to continue the series, we actually have a shop near Chinatown called Octopus Kingdom. I was like, awesome. Yeah, I'll check it out. Because I feel like he knew somehow, like, after I watch these tapes, I'm going to want to see the rest of it, right? So I go and watch home. And then again, in my confusion, I'm like, why does everyone know each other? Why does this feel like I'm missing something? I went to my local game shop, that place I told you about, and I asked the guys there, and they're like, oh yeah, Dragon Ball Z is a sequel series to a series called Dragon Ball when Goku was a little kid. And that's where the adventure pretty much started. I was like, wow, how far back does this really go? So I was just like really fascinated on how far back this story went, but at the same time, how it's a story that evolved. And as a kid growing up in America, watching American animation on TV, we never saw that before. We never saw characters evolve in these cartoons. He-Man was always He-Man, blah, blah, blah. Oh, he has a sister now, or cousin, She-Ra. Okay, cool. So it was always like introductions to new things, but it was never like an evolution. We never saw characters grow up. We never saw characters grow old. You know, it was very rare for us to ever see anything like that, if we did at all. And like I mentioned before, the only time things really impacted the shows that we watch was if there was a movie where a big event happened. And then, and then later on, years later, you just find out it's all just marketing just to get you to buy more toys and merchandise. So the more I was learning about these things, I said, it just got me hooked. So I remember the first time I decided to check out Octopus Kingdom in the city. I went there, and it was like I was in anime heaven. Because I walked in there, and all I saw was just Japanese anime galore. And it was a very tiny shop. Very tiny shop. Rare did you see more than 2 employees there. But there was this one guy there, and he became basically almost like my best friend. Because we just started talking every time I went there. And he's like, okay, what saga are you up to now? It's like, well, I just finished this. And I was like, okay, now you're on to the Vegeta saga. I'm like, okay. And they had their wall with everything all laid out there. And of course, there was other anime series there too. And I remember the first time they got their hands on Rurouni Kenshin. He's like, hey, have you seen Rurouni Kenshin yet? Or have you heard of it? I was like, no, what is it? Here. Again, this is just how familiar he was with me, how much of a good friends we were, how much of a regular I was. He got the first tape and just gave it to me for free. He's like, here, check it out. If you like it, come back, buy more. If not, well, at least you got to see it. And I was like, cool. Now, at the time, Rurouni Kenshin didn't really hit me the way it does now. I was still just all focused on Dragon Ball Z. So funny thing happened too. As I was watching these VHS tapes, bootleg tapes of Dragon Ball Z, I found out, and I forget how I found out. I think I was bored one day and I was hanging out in my mom's room because she still had an old TV in there with the rabbit ears. And I was going through all the channels, and somehow I got like a small hint of reception from a Chinese network. I was like on the station 35, whatever, some random station. So I think somehow I was picking up a signal from maybe a specific Chinese satellite from one of the houses around the area that was pulling in Chinese programming. And every afternoon around, I want to say 4-ish or 5-ish, they had this 1 hour block of Chinese translated Japanese anime. And one of them turned out to be the original Dragon Ball series. And I was like, I'm in Dragon Ball heaven right now. Because not only am I watching this series on VHS tapes, Dragon Ball Z, but now I'm getting finally exposed to Dragon Ball, the original series. So I'm seeing the adventures of Goku and Krillin as their little boys on these adventures. I remember the freaking time that they had to climb up that tower to meet one of the gods for the very first time. That episode, that whole portion took like 3 weeks, I think, for them to tell, episodic wise. Again, this is also the first time I'm exposed to prolonged storytelling. And to be fair, it was also the anime that introduced me to the concept of filler episodes. But I remember watching this thing, not understanding a lick of what they were saying because it was in Chinese. It wasn't even in Japanese. But I just paid attention to the art and to the animation. And I was able to see it all the way until the end. With the first Butōden tournament or Budokai tournament. That's the first time that we got introduced to Piccolo, the original Piccolo. And I got to see them fight tournament style for the first time. And it was awesome. It was just really, really awesome. And it's nice to see how the series started. And then I'm still also watching at the same time how the series evolved into Dragon Ball Z. And of course, you could see the change in the animation, how it evolved too. Right? And it was just so much fun. And it was like, it was a world and a universe that I really loved. Big time. And then, of course, we got GT after that, and that was okay. That's when you also saw that the animation evolved again in that instance. And I wasn't like a huge fan of that. And then that was it. That was like all the Dragon Ball that we got. And it was also around that time that I was informed that he also worked on the art on Chrono Trigger, another well-beloved RPG on the Super Nintendo. And at this time, I was really just hardcore into Dragon Ball. I would go to Chinatown. I was introduced to a lot of the stores and shops that sold anime merchandise. So I bought anything I could. Stickers, toys, figures. Octopus Kingdom sold a lot of that stuff too. And to this day, I have my whole collection of things that I bought Dragon Ball related. Plush animals. I have... When I found out, and this was again when anime was starting to become really more mainstream, there were specific anime shops that opened up in the city. One of them sold really old Japanese toys. They had it in a glass case. And I forget how much money I spent, but I bought an original Goku figure from the 80s. Of young Goku. This was from original Dragon Ball. And I still have it to this day. And they also sold anime cells. So I remember, and these were when, again, you have to understand, Dragon Ball Z, although popular, was not mainstream popular. This was before Toonami days. This was before network syndication of Dragon, Dragon Ball Z. This was before all of that. So you could have went into a shop like this that had original Dragon Ball art and cells, like animation cells, the hand-drawn stuff that they used to animate with. And you could buy any one of these things for $20, $30. If it was very elaborate with the background included, maybe $50 to $80. You go online these days, or you're in Japan now these days, those things go for like $300, $400, $500. And if there's one thing I kick myself over, is not buying more of those. But I remember I would buy like one or two. I gave them as gifts to friends of mine. One of my closest friends, the guy that I'm playing a lot of the co-op video games with, he still has the gift I gave him. This Goku anime cell. Has it framed and all. You're able to do all those things. And then I saw the art books. I remember like picking up a couple of the art books. Because again, I just was so much in love with the art style. And there isn't a week that goes by that I don't think of something Dragon Ball related. Because it was so much a part of my childhood growing up. And this is later childhood. Like pre-teens going into my teen years. And it was basically the thing that opened up my eyes to the world of Japanese anime. And just a different form of animation and art style outside of the United States. And Akira Toriyama was the first main artist from Japan that I fell in love with. And I'll never forget that. And it's amazing how from a creator and something that was creative going back to the 80s is still very relevant today. And I was so happy when more and more people were starting to learn more about Dragon Ball Z. Because I remember there was a time in the late 90s that I was really trying so hard to introduce Dragon Ball to some of my friends. And they looked at me like I was crazy. They couldn't understand the idea that a story arc can last for so many episodes. I remember we used to get into these arguments and debates about how is it that one fight can last 10 episodes? That's just ridiculous. And some of those guys now are major Dragon Ball fans. It's so funny how those things happen, but it happens. And then late 90s, early 2000s, that's when we started finally getting Dragon Ball Z on TV. Network television is when it first started. The WPIX or the WB or whatever iteration of that network was at the time. And like I said, you got the rock and roll beginning. Dragon, like a Dragon Ball Z. And then you had the American English voice cast, which I hated. I'll be honest. I hated it then and I hate it now. And I refused to watch it on TV. But you know what? I've seen it all already. But just knowing that it was on TV made me happy. Because it made me realize now more people can finally see this. And then when Cartoon Network picked it up and added it to their Toonami block, game over. That's it. That's when shit really blew up. And I was so happy about it. I'm like, there we go. Dragon Ball Z has officially become mainstream here in the United States. And that made me so happy. And then, of course, in the video game world, you started getting more and more of the video games coming out. On the PlayStation, you had a couple of those Budokai games. And then on PlayStation 2 is when it really exploded. But I still have my copies of Butōden, Super Butōden 1 and 2 on the Super Nintendo. Because that's what really, really helped introduce me to the world of Dragon Ball. And then seeing Toriyama's art pop up every now and then always makes me smile. He was very much involved in creating characters and character designs for video games. There was that Blue Dragon game that came out. I believe this was around Xbox 360 era, I want to say. I know he created the art for that. And then we started getting like reiterations and reintroductions to the Dragon Ball series with Dragon Ball Super, or what was it? The first one that came out was Kai, I believe it was, which was kind of like a retelling or remake of the original Dragon Ball Z series. Super is like really the sequel to all that. And now we're getting Guy, I think it is, later on this year. I think it was last year that they had the Dragon Ball Z Super movie that came out, which was it was the first time that we actually had a chance to go back to like how original Dragon Ball was, how original Dragon Ball Z was. And I know Akira Toriyama was very much involved in that. So that was like Hero, right? Dragon Ball Super Hero that came out in 2022, not last year. And I remember watching this in theaters and I was just like, oh man, this brings back so much memories. This feels like original Dragon Ball Z to me. And I loved it. I really loved it. And I loved how Piccolo, who it turned out to be one of my favorite characters of all time in the series. There's just something about him that I love. Like kind of that mysterious, you don't know if he's good or bad at times. But he took it upon himself to take over and train Gohan. But I loved how Piccolo got so much shine in that movie. It was that video game shop that I saw them in their glass case. They sold like these model sets, the resin model sets. And I remember saving up money and buying the Piccolo resin model set. And I said, how do I put this together? Where can I buy the paint? And the guy was telling me where to go to buy the paint and all. And for a really brief moment, that's what got me into model making. So I used to buy a lot of these resin kits. And these resin kits are just resin moldings. You had to cut them out. You had to glue all of these pieces together, and then you had to paint them from scratch. And I remember doing all that stuff because, again, I was in love with these characters, and Piccolo was the first one. And I remember there was a lot of debate when I was painting it, because if you have a keen eye and you pay attention to the anime, TV series, and the movies, Piccolo's belt, his wrap, was always a different color. I believe on the series it was like a bluish purple, and then in the movies it was red. So when I told the guy, oh, I'm going to paint his thing red, it's like, what? Why are you going to paint it red? It's bluish purple. I was like, yeah, but I don't know. For me, red looks better. And I remember seeing it in the movie. And I'm like, all right. So I painted it red. And yeah, it's different, but I liked it. It's what made it unique to me, I guess. Yeah. And I couldn't tell you how many action figures and statues and wall scrolls, which I think I still have in storage, posters, model kits. There's just so many things of Dragon Ball Z that I have. I should dedicate like a wall to all the Dragon Ball Z merchandise I have. But that's just how much I love the series. And it's all thanks to Toriyama and his art and his character designs. And like I said, it's such a huge, major part of my childhood that it's hard for me to ever forget it. That's why, like, every week, at least once, somehow, I think of something Dragon Ball related. Yeah. I know that right now, and I was just talking to my friend about that Kakarot game. that they're still supporting after all this time. It's crazy how much support they're throwing still at this game. And I remember telling him, I was like, I only played like 30 minutes or an hour of this game, and I just never went back to it. And maybe now is a good time to start again, all over again. Relive the adventures of Goku in the Dragon Ball universe. Yeah. But I'm sure a lot of you have a lot of your own memories, a lot of your own favorites. I have a poll up right now asking which saga is your favorite. Right now, it looks like the Cell Saga is leading over Majin Buu. I would have to agree. I think Cell Saga is my favorite saga within the Dragon Ball Z universe, or at least storyline. Because I don't know, there's just so much that happened in that one. And it's one of the ones that I feel like you got the most of the characters involved in it. That's when Trunks shows up around that time. I'm like, who the hell is this guy, Trunks? Turns out to be Vegeta's son from the future. Like, what? Now we have time travel in this bitch? Let's go. But yeah, I'd love to hear your stories, your favorites, your memories of Dragon Ball, Dragon Quest / Dragon Warrior, Chrono Trigger, whatever it is, any creation of Akira Toriyama. I would love to hear your thoughts and what are some of your precious memories. He's left a very major legacy behind. And it's so cool to see the love that people are sharing and giving him right now. And I'm sure it's going to be like that for weeks to come. I'm glad that we're getting Sandland coming out this year. That looks like a great game. I can't wait to check out. So many great memories, and it's not going to go away anytime soon. The legacy of Toriyama will be carried on with future episodes or series, Dragon Ball series, in games, and well deserved too. But it still sucks because he's still so young that I'd be curious as to what else we could have got with his involvement. PQ into hizzy, Chrono Trigger stood out to me because of his character design. Absolutely. I never played the game myself, but I remember staring at that box art for the longest time at KB. Like, oh, that's so cool. But at that time too, this was around when Super Nintendo games, they had a price jump, a small price jump. And it was just out of my range at that time. And I kept telling myself, next time. Yeah, but there was never a next time. But yeah, that is a game that I would love to visit now that I have the time and the patience. PQ, he was working on a ton of things from a new DB anime and probably some Dragon Quest stuff too. Yep. No, I talked a lot about all that stuff here. Like I said, we got that new Dragon Ball, I think, Guy series coming out this year. I think that's what they're calling it. And I'm sure he worked on some Dragon Quest stuff, aka Dragon Warrior, back in the days here in the United States. But DB Daima, that's it. Right. No, you're right. Was there a guy? I feel like there was a guy. Maybe. I don't know where I'm pulling that out of. I know there was a Kai. Maybe I'm confusing Kai with and adding a G in there. I don't know. But But yeah, like I said, his legacy will carry on, and future generations hopefully will be introduced to his stuff. And yeah, the great legendary Akira Toriyama. Thank you for everything and for being a major part of my childhood growing up. Major part of my childhood. All right. Wow, who knew that I could speak over an hour about Akira Toriyama? That's fascinating. Oh, we have votes here for the Frieza saga. All right. I for some reason I thought the Frieza saga was a lot of people's favorites. So it's interesting to see the split here. So very interesting stuff. AKB also in the hizzy. What's going on, gentlemen? Got into DB when DBZ was showing in Japan. My friends got really into anime because of DBZ. One of my friends made our own card-based DBZ game around the Magic era. Oh, that's awesome. Funny, too, how years later, they would actually make their own card battle game. And AKB would remember this because he helped me out a couple of times. And I'm sure a lot of you didn't know, too. But my love of anime and all of those things led to me eventually starting a small business for, I would say, 3 or 4 years. I used to have my own booth at comic conventions here in New York. And I remember one of the top sellers that I had was the Dragon Ball Z card game, the trading card game. And I remember those things would sell very well. Yeah, this was, we're going back now. What is this? 2010-ish. Very a long time ago. But it was so much fun meeting fans of Dragon Ball, talking to them about that. Of course, around this time, you had anime like Naruto, Bleach, Death Note. Those were the ones that people were talking about the most. But when you get those that look at like the Dragon Ball stuff and they're like, oh man, Dragon Ball, that's when you knew, all right, my people. And we start having conversations about it all. PQ sucks too because the past few months over famous mangaka redid some DVZs. Oh, really? That's cool. I gotta check that out. That sounds really interesting. AKB, question for you, and PQ for you too. When you were first introduced into Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z, how did you first watch it? Because that was one of the stories I shared about how I got into it all earlier. We all have our different avenues and how we were introduced to these things. Now, it's almost too easy to find them. It's almost too easy to come across these things. Whether you I feel like Dragon Ball Z, at least, you could find on any streaming platform. I remember Netflix had it at one point, Hulu had it at another point, Amazon Prime had it another time. Now Crunchyroll, of course, has a good amount of them. I feel like anywhere you go, that at least a streaming platform that you know supports anime, you're going to be able to find Dragon Ball Z and maybe even sometimes the original Dragon Ball. PQ Channel 11, then I started buying VHS with the Japanese episode sub. Okay, that makes sense because of your age. Yeah. So that makes sense that you would first be attracted to it from network television. AKB bootleg tapes from Octopus Kingdom in Chinatown. See, another Octopus Kingdom guy here. That's actually, it's funny too, because when I talked about Octopus Kingdom before, you know, those who knew. But I remember one of the first things that really connected AKB and myself was when we talked about Octopus Kingdom back in the day. And then we have another mutual friend who also was a freaking visitor to that place too. Um, so that was like one of the first things that kind of bonded us together, because we knew this really small shop near Chinatown in the city where we used to go get our bootleg VHS tapes. Yeah. But again, those are such great memories. And, you know, even though AKB is like older than I am, uh, it's amazing how we still share like those moments. Yeah, which is very rare. And it's unfortunate that these shops like that don't exist anymore. I mean, I get it. Times are so different now. Very much like the, you know, your Blockbuster videos, your Sam Goodies, your Virgin Megastores. But it's part of community. And if it wasn't for me bumping into that guy at the comic book convention, telling me that he had a shop in near Chinatown called Octopus Kingdom, giving me his business card, then it would have never allowed me to go there and have that form of community. Because every time you walked in there, it was always welcoming. And he was always down for conversation, you know, hearing about how I felt about certain things that I'm watching, recommending other things. Like I said, he was so awesome when he kind of just gave me the first bootleg tape for Rurouni Kenshin. It's like, check it out, see if you like it. If you want more, you know, we have them. If you don't, well, at least you were able to you know, check it out. So it was always awesome, and I miss those moments, you know. And a lot of people of the younger generation won't have those moments or ever experience those type of moments anymore. Everything's online now. AKB was in college, had my anime D&D friends drive 2 hours from college on a Saturday to pick up the latest bootleg tapes. See, that's awesome. You blew it! Oops, not the blew it part, but the awesome part. Yeah! Wow. So yeah, that's awesome. AKB PH, yeah, he was like that with us. Gave a free bootleg to see if we liked it. God damn it, core memory unlocked. Hell yeah. Hell yeah. That guy was the best. He was the best. I remember he would even, because I remember after I finished the Raditz saga, because I just had that one bootleg tape I picked up at a convention when I'm like way past the middle of the Cell Saga. I said I wanted to jump into the Cell Saga. And he's like, wait, hold on. I was like, before you do that, can I recommend you check out at least the Frieza saga first? Because for him, that was his favorite. And I was like, okay. So I remember I skipped past the Vegeta saga because even he mentioned, he was like, yeah, that's kind of slow, kind of boring. Frieza saga is pretty cool. And that's the precursor leading into the Cell saga. And the great thing about those bootleg tapes was that it skipped a lot of filler episodes. It really just focused on the hardcore main parts of each saga. So I remember checking out the Frieza saga. I was like, oh yeah, this is pretty dope. And that's what helped prepare me for Cell Saga after that. And I was just like, oh man, you were right. I said to him, you were right. Oh, cool guy. Very, very cool guy. And I was able to like form those type of like kind of relationships with people like that. Because, you know, me living in New York, it was a train ride away for me. So it was something that I could do on a weekly basis. Then when I started working in the city, even more so, it was easy for me. You know, I would always go into Chinatown after that. Elizabeth Center Mall, which is like in the basement. That's where they had more like vendors that sold a lot of these like anime related goods. And he had like these little boutique video game like stalls or booths. And I became friends with one of the guys there, and that's where I picked up a lot of imports, especially around the Dreamcast era when the Dreamcast first came out. He would always see me and he would have this smile on my face, and he would already have the newest stuff pulled out and plopped on top of the case for me. It's like, here's the new stuff we got this week. I was like, oh shit, oh cool. Have you played this? Have you played that? And we'll have like a small conversation. Yeah, again, you don't get that anymore today. Yeah, you could go to like a comic book convention and have great conversations with people, vendors. But where can I get that like on a weekly basis? Like now everything is just online. You read it. Maybe you engage a little bit on a Facebook page or forum, or maybe you chat with some folks while watching a YouTuber like myself. But you don't have that community in person where you could go somewhere and really converse with your fellow peers about a topic. Unless you're lucky enough to live near like one of those nice local mom and pop shops, which are unfortunately few and far in between here in New York City. And forget those GameStop dudes. Those guys are always very pretentious, especially when they have no reason to be, for the most part. And I don't blame them. I mean, they're not happy with their job, so why would they? Why would they be wanting or willing to be engaging with people? So awesome stuff. Awesome trip down memory lane. And it's honestly all because of Akira Toriyama and the wonderful creations and character designs and universes that he's pretty much introduced us all to. And for that, I'll never forget it. And like I said, there's always a reason why every week, somehow, some way, I always think of Dragon Ball at least once. Because it was a major part of my childhood growing up. And hopefully it can continue on, and kids of later generations will also appreciate the art and works of this legendary creator. 68, man. Still too early. Could have done a lot more, but I'm happy with what we got. And now it's time to appreciate it. Even more so. Yeah! All right. So with all that out of the way, what else could there be to talk about? What else is left? I mean, I feel like that's it. That's all you really need to care about, really, to be honest. Let's see. We got 6 votes so far in the poll. Cell Saga still leading 50% with Majin Buu 33%. And Frieza getting some love there. I didn't even bother putting the Raditz Saga here because I'm just like, no one really liked that, honestly. And plus they only allow you 4 slots in here anyway, so. But good stuff. All right, speaking of nostalgia, because I feel like this is turning into like one of those great nostalgia episodes. Lego is celebrating 85 years of Batman with what I think is one of the coolest Lego sets I've seen in a very long time. And something that I would be proud to have on my wall. And they introduced this Gotham City Skyline set that is inspired from Batman the Animated Series. I mean, look at how beautiful this thing is. On March 7th, LEGO Group, in collaboration with Warner Brothers Discovery, Global Consumer Products, and DC unveils LEGO DC Batman Gotham Sorry. Lego DC Batman Gotham City Skyline set. An amazing recreation of Gotham City as it appears in Batman the Animated Series. The atmospheric set, a 3D recreation of the Gotham City skyline in Lego bricks, releases as Warner Bros. Discovery celebrates 85 years of Batman throughout 2024. Let's see. The price is $300. Not surprised, because Legos are not cheap. 4,210 pieces, and will be released on April 4th for everybody. But Lego Insiders gets first dibs on April 1st. But look at this. And I'm going to expand this more. I mean, look how gorgeous this thing is. Holy shit. This is a piece of art. And, talking about childhood and nostalgia. I mean, my God. If Dragon Ball Z and Dragon Ball just in general was part of my childhood, was like a major part of my childhood, this is right up there. Probably top 5 greatest memories of growing up and watching cartoons on TV. Hands down, one of the best animated shows ever on network television. It's just unbelievable. Like I've owned Lego sets before. I've never really took the time to sit down and do much with them. But this is something I would totally dedicate 1,000%, because this is truly, truly a work of art. AKB Lego Batman the Animated 85-year set. Gasp. Wallop is panicking. I'm not a Lego collector, but I need this.
Wow. I'm going to come.
Yeah, man. This is gorgeous. Gorgeous. Yeah. I might have to save some shekels to be able to pick up one of these, because this is definitely something worth picking up. So I thought that was really, really interesting when I saw that. I was like, holy cow. Like I don't partake a lot in collecting these days as much as I used to in the past. I've been kind of trying to I've been trying to purge a little bit, to be honest with you, and really narrow down my collections to things that are specifically really important to me. Like I mentioned before, my huge Dragon Ball Z stash of collectibles that I have, like that's important to me. But that's something that I would love just to have hanging on the wall somewhere, because it is just gorgeous. Really, really beautiful there. All right. So, I mean, we have some time left here. Let's talk about some other news, some other bits of news here. Let's see. What else is going on here? Actually, I did have some stories saved up that I did kind of want to talk about briefly. I feel like this whole Toriyama stuff really, really changed what I wanted to talk about this morning. But I have to talk about this because this guy fascinates me. Paul. Okay, Rene Kondo. Don't hate. It's all about priority and what brings spark and joy to your life. And as you get older, certain things don't do that anymore. I know you're still a young buck. You'll get there. Believe me, you'll get there. But let's talk about Zack Snyder. Some reason, I don't know how it became to be, But Zack Snyder was on the Joe Rogan show recently, and boy, did Zack Snyder say a whole lot of shit. I don't know if he's approaching Tommy Tallarico levels of insanity in some of the things he believes in or talks about. But boy, is he talking some crazy stuff. Just some headlines about some of the things that he mentioned. He said more people probably saw Rebel Moon on Netflix than saw Barbie in movie theaters. That's one of his quotes that he said. Another thing he brought up was that DC has no idea what they're doing with Batman, and they're actually holding Batman back because they refuse to have him violent. Oh, really? That's interesting. But here we are on Variety talking about Zack Snyder. So Zack Snyder appeared on the Joe Rogan Experience and championed his recent pivot to Netflix. The 58-year-old filmmaker spent the bulk of his career making movies at Warner Brothers, but he made the jump to streaming starting with the 2021 release of his zombie action movie, Army of the Dead. Snyder's latest Netflix original was Rebel Moon, which debuted in December and kicked off a new space saga for the streaming giant. A second Rebel Moon film arrives this spring. Plus, this doesn't mention that his Rebel Moon Part 1 director's cut that is supposed to be 6 hours long is also coming out soon, which may come out after Part 2. How that works, I have no idea, but this is Zack Snyder's world and we're just visitors, apparently. AKB Rebel Moon versus Barbie. Boy, yes. Wow.
You blew it! I'm gonna come.
During a 2-hour conversation with Joe Rogan, Snyder marveled at the reach Netflix has compared to traditional film studios. He ran some math to prove his point and deduced that Rebel Moon, despite being panned by film critics, probably got seen by more people than Greta Gerwig's Barbie, a box office powerhouse with $1.4 billion worldwide, which made it the highest grossing film of 2023 and Warner Brothers' top grosser in history. Here's a quote. You think about Netflix, for instance, where you push a button, Snyder said. Rebel Moon, right? Say right now, it's almost at 90 million views, right? 80 or 90 million accounts turned it on, give or take. They assume 2 viewers per screening, right? That's the kind of math. So you think if that movie was in the theater as a distribution model, that's like 160 million people supposedly watching based on that math. 160 million. I can't even believe it as I'm reading this. 160 million people at $10 a ticket would be, what is that math? I don't know. 160 million times 10. That's 1.6 billion. So more people probably saw Rebel Moon than saw Barbie in the theater. Right? Right?
You blew it! I'm gonna come.
And he continues to say that's how crazy Netflix is. That's the distribution model that they've set up. I was at this thing the other day and we talked about Rebel Moon 2. And they were like, well, talk about Rebel Moon, the first one. I'm like, no, go fucking watch it. I know you have it at your house. It's not like a theater situation. You could turn it on your phone right now and watch it right here if you want it. That's how crazy it is. This model, this machine they've built is really something else. It's really crazy if you think about it. Snyder brought up Netflix's ongoing documentary series Formula One, Drive to Survive, as another example, noting that the streaming giant was able to make a more niche sport in America like Formula One and single-handedly turn it into a bonanza for viewers. Netflix is able to insert something into popular culture that's so like a deep cut, like a documentary about Formula One, Snyder said. How else do you get that to people, right? No way. You release that in a theater, 5 people go. Literally 5 people go, put it on TV, and like 100 million people see it. It's crazy. It's a different model. You give the audience an alternative. The director continued, like, what is Rebel Moon? What's new IP, right? No one knows what the fuck it is. Some space thing, I guess. Well, let's watch it. The barrier for entry is so low that it allows a lot more original and weirdo stuff to exist. While Snyder estimates that Rebel Moon probably had more viewers than Barbie, there's no way he can deny that film critics preferred Gerwig's film over his. Barbie is nominated for 8 Oscars, including Best Picture, while the first Rebel Moon movie was widely panned by critics, currently sitting at 21% on Rotten Tomatoes. Here we go. He continues to talk about that. I always thought that I was fully armed to take on those punches. And then I read the critics that came down on Rebel Moon, and it really affected me. Snyder's leading star, Sofia Boutella, recently told Vulture about the negative reviews. I'm just going to be honest about it. I feel like I'm carrying it for everybody that cared so much about this project. And that's what affected me. Not the way I look. If anything, I've been pretty lucky and people like my work in it, but the movie was criticized. It really affected me for all those who put so much heart, tears, and sweat in this project, she continued. It's hard to see something being demolished to that extent. I'm proud to have been part of it, and if there is no more Rebel Moon, it will be a very important part of my life that I will defend forever. Of course, Snyder loves Rebel Moon, of course, and he also told Rogan that he is a big fan of Gerwig's blockbuster comedy. He said he loved the Barbie movie and once again addressed a line in Gerwig and Noah Baumbach's script that calls out the toxicity surrounding Snyder's cut of Justice League. The Snyder Cut joke in Barbie arrives during a critical moment in the film. Ryan Gosling's Ken has introduced Barbieland to the patriarchy, brainwashing the once independent Barbies into existing solely on to serve the Kens. America Ferrara gives an impassioned feminist speech that lifts the spell, prompting Barbie, played by Alexandra Shipp, to describe her time being under the patriarchy as the following. It's like I've been in a dream where I was really invested in the Zack Snyder cut of Justice League. That was a great line, by the way. That was fantastic. That is a line in that movie, literally, Snyder told Rogan. And I'm like, that's awesome. My wife was like, that's cool, right? That's cool that they came after you. I was like, that's 100% cool. He's the kind of guy that's like, you could say the worst shit about him. It's like, you know what? They talked about me. Hey. Right? Any press is good press. Snyder did tell Men's Health last year that Warner Brothers gave him a heads up about the Snyder Cut joke before Barbie opened in theaters. I thought Barbie was great, Snyder said at the time, and I think the joke is pretty good. Yeah, but Snyder was just on a rampage on that show, talking a lot of stuff, doing his crazy new math, whatever that new math is. Just crazy stuff. And I remember just that headline alone just had my mind kind of, I was dizzy. I was dizzy for a good amount of time. AKB, what is that math? I don't know. That says it all right there. PQ, that dude straight napkin mathing it. Netflix ain't the crazy one. Bad publicity is good publicity. Yeah, any publicity is good publicity. It didn't, was it Nicki Minaj or Cardi B or one of those rappers said something about, had a lyric about that? It's like, you talking about shit about me? I don't care much, something like that. Because anything, any was that? Any press is good press, something like that. There was like a lyric like that. But yeah, he's absolutely right. And boy, you know, he's definitely one who's not to shy away from any of that stuff. I'm here on Dark Horizons talking about Rebel Moon. Zack Snyder offered an update on when the director's cuts of his two-part sci-fi epic Rebel Moon are arriving. Netflix opted to release the PG-13 theatrical cut for the first part back in December, with the second part coming in April. At some point down the line, later this year, it's expected the R-rated longer versions of each would arrive. Now, in the new interview with 1 Minute Man, or iMinute Man, Snyder gave an update and confirmed both films' director's cuts will be released at the same time. As for when, that's still up in the air, but there's a rough idea in place. We don't have a date yet, but I think it's going to be, in the summer. Snyder adds that the films reach like about an hour longer than the original, and the two director's cuts combined for a total of 6 fucking hours. The theatrical cut for the first part opened to scathing reviews, something those involved in the film are aware of. And then this goes on to talk about Sofia Boutella and all that. The theatrical cut of Rebel Moon Part 2, The Scargiver, is set to screen on the streamer on April 19th. View at your own risk and know that he is going to be mathing your views multiple times. But Snyder essentially is now Peter Jackson, treating the Rebel Moon series like the Lord of the Rings series. And he feels the need to have these extensive director's cuts for his movies. So there you have it. That is the world of Zack Snyder. Again, we are just all visitors in this world of his. And it is truly fascinating to hear him talk about all of this stuff. Oh boy. All right. What else is going on here? Very interesting news that I'm excited to check out. There will be a short kaiju film from director Takashi Yamazaki. He's the director of Godzilla Minus One. It will release online on March 14th. So mark your calendars on that. That sounds like that's going to be really exciting and a lot of fun there. Also, speaking of Japanese directors, one of my favorite Japanese directors, Takashi Miike, shot a short film on an iPhone and is planning to release it on Apple. It's a 19-minute long short film. Let's see. Apple had a surprise in store Wednesday for fans of Japanese manga and always stimulating neo-noir cinema of Takashi Miike, a 19-minute short film made by the filmmaker using only an iPhone 15 Pro. Article here on The Hollywood Reporter, titled Midnight, the mini-movie is an adaptation of a lesser-known work by legendary Japanese manga artist Osamu Tezuka. Much of the film takes place in neon-lit Tokyo at night, including a thrilling car chase sequence. A deliberate excuse on Apple's part to showcase their device's video capture capabilities in low lighting. The story centers on a late-night taxi driver named Midnight, played by popular Japanese actor Kento Kaku, who roams the streets of Tokyo offering help to those in need. The film follows Midnight as he comes to the aid of a young woman, played by Konatsu Kato, who is struggling to take over her recently deceased father's truck driving business while fighting off a nefarious local gang led by an evil boss played by the acclaimed character actor Yukiyoshi Ozawa. Apple released the film on its YouTube channel late in the afternoon on Wednesday in Japan. So I would highly recommend you check this out. I don't know if it's subtitled. Here is the link to that movie. I'll leave it in the comments here for everyone. Oops, I'm not going to write it because I'm pretty sure that's going to get me copyrighted. Hold on. Why can't I copy this? Copy link. Thank you. There you go. If you want to check it out, link is right there. I'll also make sure to include it in the description of the video for those watching on demand later on. But Takashi Miike is one of my all-time favorite Japanese directors, modern directors, I should say. I should preface it. A lot of his movies I have seen, I really adore. I love his style. Very, very interesting style. Very, it leads to a lot of great adaptations, especially when you're looking at manga and anime adaptations. Still to this day, I think one of the movies he directed, very underrated, was the adaptation of the video game Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney, which is fascinating and a very well done movie in my opinion. Anything he puts out is great, so I highly recommend you checking this out. I haven't seen it yet. I don't know if there's subtitles available, but I will be checking this out this weekend. It's going to be awesome to see. Tezuka, that's Astro Boy's mangaka. Yes, that is correct. So hopefully you'll enjoy it there, AKB. So check that out. The biggest news of the week, I think, especially when it comes to fandom of all things, there was a very, very cute video that Daniel Day Kim did with the cast of Avatar, The Last Airbender, the live action cast on Netflix, where he did one of those, pranks where he, everyone is there anticipating news for a second season. And he kind of makes it known that it doesn't look like Netflix is going to be going that route. And you can kind of see the faces on a lot of the people there. They're just like sad. The actress who plays, I forget her name, was like on the verge of tears. And then he said, yeah, instead of like going on with a season 2, Netflix decided to go with a season 2 and 3. And everyone was just like, what? Like, crazy. But yeah, it was announced. And again, no brainer, especially with the huge popularity and kind of, well, there, from what I keep seeing is that there are a lot of mixed reviews and thoughts on the live action the Avatar there on Netflix. I enjoyed it. Again, I am coming to it, never really watching the original animation series, so I have no ties to it, but I really enjoyed what I saw. And there were a lot of things to like, even though there are some, I did have criticisms on some of the things there too. But with something that popular, it's a no-brainer for Netflix to continue on. And for them to now commit to seasons 2 and 3 is great news, especially for these actors involved in it, very young actors. So they'll be able to really fully carry out and finish the entire storyline in live action form with the series ending after season 3. Which makes sense. And Netflix released kind of this little cute poster with a lot of the elements represented. Like season 1 was about, what was it? I guess it was like more water-based. And then season 2 is going to be earth-based. And season 3 is fire-based, like that. So you could kind of, I'm sure if you're familiar with the animation, or if you can kind of at least think of where things are going, you can kind of see where the progression is heading there, which kind of makes sense, especially with how season 1 ended, with how things turned out, especially for the Earth realm people, the Earth Kingdom. So very, very cool stuff. And I'm very happy and excited for everybody there. And that means I get to see more of Avatar live action, which is fun for me. And here's that poster I was talking about. So you could kind of see how each season is represented by what's going to be the main focus, if you really think about it, at the end of the day. So I think that's really, really cool. I think that's awesome. That's going to be a lot of fun there for a lot of people. So another thing that also popped up, again, this episode is filled with nostalgia, right? We talked about the works of Akira Toriyama, Dragon Ball, about, growing up, things we were into. There was something that was very popular. Some would argue that maybe it was ahead of its time at one point, but it definitely veered the culture in one direction when they were out. And it was like good timing for it too. And that is the company Rooster Teeth. Rooster Teeth announced this week that they were closing down for good. And I'm sure a lot of people were even surprised that they were still around doing stuff. They were bought out by Warner Brothers, I think it was. Warner Brothers Discovery bought them at one point. And as we already know, Warner Brothers is phasing out stuff that they probably feel and deem as unnecessary or no longer sustainable because they're trying to save a lot of money. And that included Rooster Teeth. So I'm here in Dark Horizons. Warner Brothers Discovery shutting down its streaming subsidiary Rooster Teeth after more than 20 years in the business. The news was announced on March 6th in both a company memo and blog post on the company's official site. Jordan Levine, general manager at Rooster Teeth, said in an internal memo, Rooster Teeth is shutting down due to challenges facing digital media resulting from fundamental shifts in consumer behavior and monetization across platforms, advertising, and patronage. Rooster Teeth's podcast network, The Roost, will continue to operate with Warner Brothers Discovery, apparently looking to sell that podcast network to a potential buyer. The shutdown process of the rest of Rooster Teeth is expected to take several months. Rooster Teeth started back in 2003 in Texas and had its first hit with the Halo Machinima series Red vs. Blue, which led to millions of views, DVDs, spin-offs, and merchandise. In 2021, their primary YouTube channel had nearly 10 million subscribers and over 6 billion video views. So Rooster Teeth, like I said, was an important staple in, I guess, weekly, monthly online viewing of shows and videos, especially in the early days of YouTube. I remember in my second stint of working in the video game industry, Rooster Teeth and Red vs. Blue was a big thing because this was around when Halo first came out. Halo first came out, everyone was playing Halo, and then Halo multiplayer was this big thing that I had so much fun playing back in the day with a lot of my friends. Halo 2 comes out, big midnight launch event. I remember picking up the game with some friends and people I worked with, bring it back to the offices of the game company just so we could play it that night. All of us. And then that led to months and months of online multiplayer fun. But because of the popularity of Halo, I remember when Red vs. Blue came out, that was like must-watch like videos. That was like must-watch TV, must-view videos that we had to watch every time a new episode was out because it was funny, it was relatable, because it parodied and played on a lot of the things you would encounter playing Halo, especially in multiplayer. The script, the writing was very well done, and it was, at the time, one of the best things I've seen online. At a time when online stuff was still very new, especially like the YouTube universe. You know, and I remember Red vs. Blue continued on to many, many, many seasons. They sold DVDs. It brought Rooster Teeth on the map. And I know Rooster Teeth was involved in many other things, but for me, nothing stood out more so than Red vs. Blue. So when I heard this news, I'll be honest with you, I was actually kind of surprised that they were still around doing stuff because I have not thought about them in a very, very long time since those days. I didn't even know Warner Brothers Discovery bought them at one point. So I found that all very fascinating. And to me, this is really not a surprise anymore because with the changing landscape, everything going on, it's hard for a company like Rooster Teeth to still remain relevant. You know, they knocked it out of the park with this one thing. And to be honest with you, I couldn't tell you what other things that they've done after that that would worthy you watching and being loyal to the brand of Rooster Teeth. Now, maybe it's just because I'm older and I've moved on. So maybe they have had fans of a younger generation still following their stuff. But for me, it was just nothing that I saw. There's just nothing that drew my attention anymore after the whole Red versus Blue thing. Because also, to be fair, Red versus Blue also after a while kind of, its charm faded. It felt like the writing was starting to get lazy and not as funny anymore. So, just like anything that's lasted a long time, usually it fades. And there is no way they can kind of like bring it back into prominence. It's very rare that you get to see things that last for so long still bringing in those type of views, still bring in that fan base. Like The Simpsons or Family Guy or South Park. It's just it's a rare thing these days that you have an established property that can last that long and still bring in that same type of enthusiasm from its fans. Someone like myself, when it comes to Rooster Teeth, it had its moment for me, and then I just moved on. I moved on to other things after that. So it was surprising to hear that they were still around. I was happy for them. I think that's really cool that they stayed around that long, but I think it comes to no surprise to me that they eventually had to close down. But they had a good run. 20 years? That's monstrous. And even though they're closing down, their legacy will always remain on YouTube. I mean, with a YouTube subscription base, 10 million subscribers, come on. Good for them. And hopefully everyone involved can find their way to do other things outside of the Rooster Teeth brand. AKB, Red versus Blue, and then they picked up and funded the, do you pronounce it Ruby? Animation and series that was popular in its own right, but past those two main series, they were more of a gaming podcast. Right. That makes sense. I mean, the thing is, like, again, if you're loyal to the brand, you're loyal to the brand, right? It's just if you weren't into any of that stuff, then you would have just moved on and watched something else. I know the popularity of Ruby for a long time. I've seen it pop up multiple times, but I never took the time to watch it or pay any attention to it. But knowing that they were behind that, good for them. Then they had two outstanding pieces of properties that they can say that they stood behind. So that's cool. But like I said, when you have that happening and you've been around for this long, the landscape is changing. So, unfortunately, and again, every time you either merge or you get bought out by a major studio, like a Warner Brothers Discovery, you are now kind of at the whims of their mercy. And if you're relevant and you're bringing in the dough, you'll stick around. The minute you don't, you're just another number. And with the amount of stuff that Warner Brothers Discovery has been kind of weaning out, canceling, tax write-offs, all that stuff, it was bound to happen. So, Rooster Teeth, it was nice knowing you. You at least can say that those involved with Rooster Teeth and the Rooster Teeth brand was part of a pop culture at a specific time and was relevant. Like I said, must-watch stuff every time a new episode came out. I remember we would be at the game company that I worked at, and every time a new episode came out, we're like, all right, during lunch or after work, we're all going to be watching this, the latest episode. And we would watch and we would laugh. Because again, it's like so relatable. It's like stuff that we knew because we all played Halo, especially multiplayer Halo. So I'll never forget those moments. And then we would always rewatch it. Because like, what did he say? What was that joke? Oh my God, remember that moment? It was really, really funny. Definitely a moment in time that was. And it was awesome to see. And it was awesome to be within that lexicon at the time. So good old Rooster Teeth. Thanks for the memories. And yeah, I think for now that will do it for today. A lot of nostalgia today, a lot of memories, a lot of looking back, which is important to do every now and then, because you have to appreciate where you come from. You have to appreciate the things that kind of brought you joy, that kind of help formulate your creative side or help formulate the way you look at things. You know, if you are an artist, if you are a creator of some point, storyteller, if you work with storytelling, you work something about that, or just the way you carry your everyday life, the way you look at things, your philosophies, your views. A lot of that comes from the stuff that we grew up on. A lot of the stuff that we kind of were surrounded by. And you every now and then, you should acknowledge all of those things that make you who you are. You know, my love of anime and animation and art came a lot from Toriyama stuff. Even more so when I started finally visiting Japan. You know, it's like, I'm here. I'm finally here, where all of these creations came from and originated from. You know, and those are all very important moments of my life. You know, speaking of Rooster Teeth, again, that was a moment in time that was very important to me. You know, with the great group of people I worked with, many of whom I'm still very close friends with, AKB Mobile being one of them. PQ, not so much. You know, he comes and goes. To be fair, PQ was like after my time at that company, but I was introduced still as part of it. But I cherish those moments that we had, you know, not just the work, but the bonding moments, you know, our lunch breaks, our after work. We would stay in the office late just so we could either watch stuff or play games together, right? Like those were the days, man. And you don't really get to experience a lot of that anymore. You know, so it's important to kind of remember those times, you know, because it makes you who you are today, you know, and share those moments with other people. I love telling stories about me growing up. I love sharing my experiences with people, you know, and to pass that on, and then to find out that other generations also equally have those same type of moments. It may be very different from ours now, but at least they're still having moments like that, which is very much important. But it's also nice to kind of share with a younger generation, well, this is the moments we had when I was your age, which is very different from today. But you could still see the impact it made on us, a long-lasting impact. You know, I have a huge smile on my face when I hear my friends introducing to their kids, you know, Transformers or Dragon Ball, and hearing that the kids are loving it and liking it. You know, introducing them to the games that we played growing up. Now, maybe some may like it, some may not, you know, but at least, you know, they're getting a chance to be exposed to the things that we grew up with. I mean, unfortunately, people will never experience going to like a video rental store anymore, or going to like an Octopus Kingdom like environment and have that sense of community, that sense of passion that you could share with other people, you know. But there could still be very much be moments like that if you go to like a local mom and pop video game shop, or, you know, a tabletop gaming store, and sit there and talk to your peers and your colleagues and your friends and reminisce on things that you're passionate about. You know, not everything has to be online. It's good to have those moments in person. You know, so it's something nice to just remind yourselves about, and you know, look back and appreciate a lot of these moments, because before you know it, bam, you're now 40 plus years old, 50 plus years old, you know, or the creators that you loved are now gone and disappearing. But the legacy they leave will always be there. Be there for everyone to experience and be there within you as a part of you. So always cherish those moments and appreciate the things that make you who you are and make you appreciate the things that you love and be the personality and creator and person that you've become to be. Right? All that stuff. And I appreciate all of you listening and experiencing my stories and my memories as I share them all with you. I appreciate AKB and PQ sharing their moments, going back down memory lane and all that. And that's basically what I like to do here. And you'll expect to see more of that stuff for sure coming on in all the streams that we do and the content we do here on the channel and all that good stuff. So I'm going to leave you all with that. Have a wonderful Friday. Enjoy your weekend. I will try my best to stream again over the weekend. But most importantly, Oscars are this Sunday. So I will be streaming live my Oscar reactions to the show with my buddy Blake of the Movie Time podcast. Expected to go live on Sunday, 6 p.m. Eastern time. So make sure you tune in if you are interested in joining us for our live reaction to the Oscars. That's this Sunday. Outside of that, I'll see if I could squeeze in a game and chat stream for us to hang out. I need to go back to Dark Forces and finally play through the rest of that game. So hopefully I can do that. But if not, I will be back to my usual schedule next week, starting Monday, 10 a.m. Eastern time. Look at the box office and, talk about the latest in news and all that. So again, thank you so much for all your support. Thank you so much for watching. If you haven't done something yet, like, dislike, subscribe, all that stuff. Comment. Let me know all the things about everything that we talked about in this episode here. One last look at the polls. We have 6 votes. Not bad. Cell Saga still beating everything, 50%. Majin Buu, 33%. 70%, 17% going to the Frieza Saga. What I'll do is on the main channel, I will create this poll, recreate the poll, and have it live over the weekend so that we can get more volunteers of people who probably just didn't have the time to tune in on the live stream here. So all that out of the way, looking forward to seeing you again real soon. Stay cool, stay classy, stay safe. I'll catch you all in the next time, y'all. Peace out. Bye-bye.